All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our show. We are the International Art Alliance, 7 artists from around the world. We got together in early 2021 and decided that we had to do a group show. We met in an online class and thought, don't want to sort of cut ties with these people, so we all got together and decided to do this project that we call Palimpsest. Now, a palimpsest, the definition, is something reused or altered, but still bearing visible traces of its earlier form. So what we are doing is basically sending paintings around the world with each of us leaving our mark on the painting before we send it to the next person. And in the end, we will see how these 7 paintings mirror our, I guess, the way that we all get along. We'll see if these, we'll discover whether our artistic styles are as compatible as our personalities. I'd like to start off by just giving a quick introduction of the group, and then we'll speak with the subject of today's interview. So we have Julie Brayton, who is in Westerly, Rhode Island, who paints coastal scenes and you know, sea art, I guess, if that makes any sense. We have Denise Buisman-Pilger, who is from the Netherlands, now living just outside of Montreal, who suffers from wanderlust and creates paintings and artworks of cities and areas where she's traveled in an effort to keep that connection with the places that she's visited. Ross D. Berman, who was the subject of last week's, no, he was the host of last week's show or program live. Ross connects with his spirituality and culture through finding meaning in different iterations of the symbol chi, which means life. We have Lara Spedetto from Buckingham in the UK, actually from Italy, but who lives in Buckingham, UK right now, who paints portraits of women. She tries to, she basically shows women's strength through her paintings, looks for the duality and the harmony in all her paintings. We have Cheryl Wilcox from north of Oka, New South Wales, Australia, where it's really early in the morning now, who loves where she lives. And so she paints what she loves, which is basically her surrounding, her the world, the natural world that surrounds her. And we have the subject of today's interview, who is Rose L. Williams, living in Vancouver, BC, from Montreal, with roots in Trinidad and Tobago. Rose is a self-proclaimed forager and creates stunning nature-derived artwork from paintings to textiles. You can see some of Rose's artwork in the background now. It's really, really pretty. I guess I'll start with my question for Rose.
I forgot you.
Oh yeah, I'm Stéphanie McLean. I'm from Montreal, live in Toronto, and I paint portraits of jazz musicians, other musicians, basically performers. So back to Rose, thanks. Back to Rose. You mentioned during a previous Facebook Live that you started working as an artist from a young age. Can you tell us a little about the path your art took from when you were 16 years old to present, and how and whether your style has significantly evolved, and whether any of the seeds remain from your initial style, like traces from your very first style?
Oh, okay. Thanks for the question, Stephanie, and the lovely introduction to the group. Before I start speaking today, I just want to acknowledge that where I am speaking from, I'm on Musqueam, Coast Salish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish unceded lands here in Vancouver. And I'd like to acknowledge that I'm a guest hosted on these lands, and I really appreciate it. This does tie into how I've developed my relationship with sustainable foraging, because it's been deeply influenced by the people of this place. So I'd just like to start by saying that. In terms of my early career, I literally started early because I mentioned there was a logo contest in the school board that I was attending. It was a very large school board because it was the English language school board of Greater Montreal and Northern area. So at the time it was huge. So I was pretty thrilled that I was shortlisted in this logo competition. And it was for when they turned their name into Lorneval School Board. So for about 40 years, my logo was on Lorneval School Board stuff. And when I won the competition, my dad told me, oh, you earned something, because I got a gift certificate to go to the art store. I'll never forget, I bought a set of gouache. It was my first, like, I could buy whatever I want in the art store. And my dad said, well, you earned money for making art, so you're a professional. So as far as I was concerned, I was a professional, and it just continued from there. When I was younger as well, I was very lucky because a lot of the people around me were very artistic. My grandfather was a drafting engineer for Dominion Engineering, and he was an artist on the weekend, although he was colorblind. He did sketches of the local area, like Point Claire and Dorval and the Lake Shore in Montreal and stuff. Yeah, so in that family home, we had a lot of granddad sketches up and framed. So in my family, there was a evident valuing of creative output from childhood. So I never had to struggle like a lot of people I've encountered studying art to prove that what I was doing was valuable to my family, because we had artists and musicians in the family already. So granddad encouraged me when I was very young to draw. He would give me critiques and taught me how to do contour drawing. So I just went, and I was drawing when I was 16 and doing photography in high school. I had a great high school program, mass media and Rosemere High School. Our teachers were professional artists, so there was a lot of dedication. And I got a lot of time in the darkroom to do darkroom photography and printing and developing. And that has stayed as a solid thread through my work, is going back to photography, going back to taking pictures, to just explore how you see the world through a lens.
Right.
So a lot of my work, you'll see even like the deer in the background, I shot the photo of the deer. So the point of view is always that kind of influenced by that, seeing things through the camera. So yes, that thread has gone from when I stole the family camera when I was like 10.
Oh, you stole it.
Well, in those days, my dear, film was very expensive.
It was. Yes, it was.
And you didn't really let the kids go run off with the camera. But I did. So mom had a whole load of random weird photos. Very bad, blurry photos.
Oh.
There's still some in the family photo album. Seriously, I can go through and find some of the blurry photos that I took, like on that first wander through the neighborhood kind of thing. So I'm still doing the same thing. I don't go anywhere. My boyfriend was like, I took photos out of the window while the sunset was going down the Sea to Sky Highway, and I got some really good shots.
Oh, that's great.
Well, it wouldn't stop, so I had to take it while we were moving.
So you've kept that curiosity throughout all this time, like the curiosity of basically looking through, seeing the world through the lens, and you still obviously sketch. You've kept up all of those skills. You can see in the background. I mean, that deer is just wow. That's lifelike. And the colors that you use, they all seem to go together. Do you always do you favor those colors? Because I'm seeing a lot of pinks and yellows, really pretty.
Those are the colors, the most common colors that you can solidly chemistry capture in natural dye. So the pink is from a bug called the cochineal bug, and it's the original source of crimson, the color crimson. And it was actually a major player in the war between Queen Elizabeth and the Spanish during that huge long war, because they were fighting over access to those resources in South America. So crimson was actually El Dorado. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes, if you look it up, it's a very, very fascinating history. So it comes from a bug that's a parasite on a cactus. And also I use madder root, which is also a very common natural dye, and it's the root of a plant. And it was very commonly used in Britain before synthetic dyes. And the oranges and the yellows, most of those come from the pigments from the leaves themselves, because I have a technique of using a natural dye blanket alongside the leaf itself. So the leaf leaves its pigment and the dye blanket leaves its pigment. So this one was 3 dye blankets of 3 different colors. You can see they go horizontally. And then I just enhance them with paint.
Okay.
So
yeah, that's fascinating.
That's why the
Sounds
color.
like a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. I have to extract the color from either chips of logwood, which is bark from a tropical tree, or the bugs, or the roots, or the leaves. And right now I'm working with lichens and mushrooms that I'm collecting sustainably when I forage. And those you either have to extract with ammonia for months and then use it, or you do a boiling water technique. So there's a lot of work to make the pigments that I use.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, that's it for my question. Julie, do you have a question for Rose?
Well, I was curious about your psychogeography and your phenomenology, which, based on what my little bit of research on that, you talked about it in your About You page, and it seems like you're capturing moments in time and the response to whatever happens in the moment. And I wondered, do you do that for other people besides your own work?
Yes, it's a fabulous experience. Thank you for asking, Julie. Because the things that grow where we live are so tied to our own personal experience of our environment, I am able to sort of translate that on a certain level for other people in commissions. So I had a commission last year where a friend in Alberta, his wife had taken a photo on her farm of a fawn she found in the grass, baby deer. And she was really thrilled about this photo, but she didn't really know what to do with it. And we did a commission where I printed local leaves that are common to that area as well. And I printed it on a piece of piece silk, which is a harm-free type of silk where the worms are not harmed. And I printed the leaves, and then I painted with natural dyes that had been made from plants, the fawn from her photo onto the silk. So she now has a piece that kind of represents the psychogeography of her place and some of the parts of the stimuli that she experienced when she found that fawn, so that she can kind of almost relive it and share it with other people through this piece on silk. Yes, it's a fabulous experience and I loved doing it.
Wow, that's amazing.
Thanks, Julie.
And Denise, do you have something you'd like to ask Rose?
I do. I mean, oh my gosh, I just love all your talk about materials, and I'm super interested in your process. When I look at your work, I see a lot of the botanical printing, obviously, but you also seem to add a lot of elements with other materials. You bring in like other paints and other things. So I really like to learn more about your process. Like when you create a painting, do you create your composition like beforehand, or is that something that grows naturally? And how do you decide which materials and techniques you'll be using for a piece?
Yeah, that one is a very kind of mysterious process, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm the kind of artist that has always had this kind of blessing that when I get into the zone and I'm being creative, I kind of feel like I'm channeling something else that doesn't necessarily come from me. Yeah, I call it channeling because it just feels like if I get myself into the right state of mind and mindfulness, then I'll just sort of be struck with something. And I've always been like that as an artist. But as I've gotten older, I've been able to sort of manage it and control it more. And I find that what I discovered with the leaves was as I collect leaves through the season, I stick some in the freezer, I dry some are fresh in the fridge. My family hates me because the fridge is just like they can't find anything because there's so many leaves and weird things in the fridge that I collected. But anyway, so in my mind, you know, there's an organization where I know I got some things that I had that catalpa tree last year. I got some leaves in the freezer, and then I'll pick up maybe some beautiful acer leaves and I'll think, oh, that would go really well with the catalpa leaves and the Buddha belly leaves that I had from that. So I'll just like, I don't know, I have this kind of catalog of leaves and materials in my brain. And I have this wonderful place that I go here in Vancouver called Our Social Fabric. It's a clearinghouse and an organization that gathers donated end of the bolt fabric from movie industry, from the interior design industry, from places that go liquidations. And they take it, and what otherwise would have gone to the landfill in the past, they make it available twice a month for us to go and dive into. So I also have a stock of repurposed fabric stuck in the corner over there, right there. And when I decide, okay, I'm going to make something, I don't know what happens is I put the fabric out there and then the leaves just kind of come together. And the real creative part is laying the leaves down and deciding on a dye blanket and which dyes and which colors I want to do. And then I roll it up really tight and I stick it in the steamer and I steam it for 2 hours and I have no idea how it's going to come out. None. You can do exactly the same process, exactly the same way, and it will not come out the same. There was a difference in how tight you bundled it. There was a difference in the distribution of the chemistry on the fabric. The leaves were different, whatever. It's never the same. So it's essentially a monoprint. What then I end up with is I have a monoprint. A one of. I look at it, I stick it on the wall, I rolled it up, I think about it, I put it on the wall one day and it will tell me. Sometimes they're in the bag and I'll take a photo of a raccoon or a bird or something and it'll go boing, oh, that one should go there. Boom. So that piece, I had printed it with the botanicals and then later I had taken the photo of the deer and then sometime after that, they kind of in my brain went, I should put that right there. He just entered it in my imagination. So it was kind of like, boom. And then I just do the painting and there you go. And that one, I was painting it during the Australian wildfires. So the wildfire got entered in and it wasn't planned and none of them are planned. The only thing that's planned is like which fabric, which leaves, and yeah, you're right. I say mixed media because I have a whole 40 years of painting experience to know that what I'm layering one thing on top of the other will maintain its integrity in the end. I learned my painting techniques from a great master. His name was Mirko Jacobo. He was from Bulgaria. His wife was Janina Jacobo. She was from Poland. They were old school European painters. They taught us the real solid basis of how to make sure it keeps its integrity. In those days, in the 80s, people were painting with tar and human waste and stuff.
Right.
And it was really, really
Yep.
popular. I saw it like at the Metropolitan in New York and stuff. It was like, but those pieces ate through the canvas, right? So yeah, at the time, especially in the 80s, there was like a big talk about, do you really want your work to eat through the canvas or not?
Wow.
So
Amazing.
yeah, I use I use natural dye, ink, alcohol ink, gouache, colored pencils, water pencils, oils, charcoal, pastels, whatever works.
So lots
Wow.
of different media and a very organic process. That's great.
Amazing. Thank you, Rose.
Thank you.
Ross, what would your question for Rose be?
Oh, thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, like I'm just seeing how intrigue is given way to complete and utter fascination with what you're doing, Rose. Your techniques and your whole process to get there. It's like nothing I've ever heard or encountered. It's so different from everything. And that you've got this catalog in your mind is pretty extraordinary. Okay, so my first question, I guess, was, well, how do you file what you're doing? And you've got refrigerators, so that's something. So, because like what you just mentioned about this deer painting behind you, that the fires in Australia entered your consciousness and through your imagination, you were able to manifest this piece. And I know from knowing you that you've had your own experience with personal pain too. How do you manage to express beauty, like real, true beauty, but with all this pain, like climate anxiety, personal pain, and then create something beautiful?
Well, that's a really, really good question, Ross, and I really appreciate it because you're so deep. And that's a deep question. It's not easy. I struggled with that for a long time. For quite some years, my art was very angry. I used to want to just bash people with the message, like, get your shit together, the climate's dying, ah! And it was too much. It was overwhelming and it even drained me. So yeah, I just eventually I dove deeper into my passion for what I love about the environment. And in fact, that's how I've been able to sort of like counter the climate angst. Like I was a child like Greta Thunberg. I became very, very despondent and very depressed when I was around 9 or 10 because I watched David Suzuki. And my dad taught science and ecology and biology. And I was hearing the message, and I was in love with whales when I was a child. I was absolutely enamored of whales, and they were endangered. In those days, they were very, very endangered. And I'm getting choked up even talking about it. I experienced a lot of that angst that Greta Thunberg expresses to the world. I didn't have a method of dealing with it like she did, and nobody really took me seriously. So it went into my art. And I did wake up at night when I was a child with anxiety, and I would draw and paint trees and birds and flowers and skies and just the environment. And it was a way of kind of, I guess, releasing that tension. And so as I've gotten older, the tension is still there, but the way I release it is like with love. So I think that I kind of try and counteract it with how much I absolutely loved that encounter with that deer was very genuine. He was in the suburbs. I was in the suburbs. He had his doe with him. She was behind him. They were in someone's yard. And he lifted his head and he looked at me, and I felt he was saying, where else am I supposed to go to eat? We don't have anywhere else to go to eat. And he was protecting her because she was not paying attention. She knew he was watching what this creature was doing, if I was a threat or not. And we had a moment, that buck and I, we had a moment because his habitat is completely, basically gone. And he was in the suburbs. And so I expressed my love for him. and the environment. And it is what they call the old tradition of romantic art. That's what romantic art originally was. It wasn't about people falling in love. It was Gaspar Friedrich, you know, standing on the edge of the black cliff looking into the canyon, right? Like that's the tradition I'm coming from, is the tradition of romantic art, where we're exuding love and pain at the same time. Like Joseph Beuys, also one of my artistic inspirations, would talk about the poison and the cure being in the same place. The poison and the cure are the same act. So that's what I try to kind of, when I'm channeling, that's partly what I'm trying to channel.
Thank you.
Yes.
That was an amazing answer too.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Ross. I forgot to mention at the beginning that Ross is joining us from LA, California. I don't think I mentioned that, so I wanted to make sure I did. Next, Lara, do you have a question for Rose?
Yes, related to what about what she was saying, I've seen that in her art there are portraits about yourself and nature.
Yeah.
And I would like to, that you talk about the portrait, because I think that you needed to, as you explained actually just now, to paint nature, to soften the anger that you've got inside you. So I would like that to talk about the portrait, because I find them very, very deep, very strong. It's like made an impact to me.
Thanks, Lara. I appreciate that. Yeah, there was a time where I was trying to express how I felt about what's happening to Mother Nature and also to my own body, because most of my life I have suffered from a disease that affects only women. It affects 1 in 10 women on the planet. It's called endometriosis. And I was ignored by the medical community for 30 years. So I ended up with kidney disease and destruction of my bladder and big parts of my body that are required for living. So the pain and the negation and the dismissal that I experienced kind of in institutions like hospitals and medical system, I felt was reflected in also what's happening to Mother Nature with the oil industry and the raping of her resources, and they're just not listening and they're not paying attention to her giving us all her signals that she's suffering and that we just don't listen. So yes, those portraits were very intense because I was literally identifying myself and my own body with what's happening to the earth.
Thank you.
That is, yeah. Sorry to hear that, Rose. Yeah.
It happens to a lot of people, as I said, 1 in 10 women. And right now in Canada, everyone who's been waiting for the right surgery has been waiting over 3 years because of COVID.
Oh, gosh.
Including my niece, and my other cousin just had her surgery last week.
Oh, sorry. I think we have time for one more quick question and answer. Cheryl, do you have a question for, I was going to say an answer. Do you have a question?
Rose. Hi, Rose. I've always made the assumption that you've always loved working with your hands, meaning that you've always been a sewer, probably, and you've always made things and built things. And I would just like to know more about your accessories and your fabrics, or even to have a better look at them.
My mom was also a teacher. She taught home ec. So I did learn how to sew, cook, all of that stuff. Also, my Aunt Carmen was an amazing textile artist. She did special type of embroidery called open stitch. And she traveled the world on what she made doing embroidery in Trinidad and Tobago. She was a true artist. So yes, I have gone to a lot of museums looking at textiles, influenced by my aunt and my mom. And I've been sewing and making things, like my mom taught macrame. So yeah, long time coming.
Oh, cool. So cool.
Thanks,
Well,
everyone.
this actually ended up, the timing is actually perfect. Rose, thank you so much for sharing so much of your art and your personal experiences with us. It's nice for us to get to know you better.
It's been a
Pardon
pleasure
me?
sharing my heart with you guys and doing this together. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. And for those of you who were joining us, please come back next week and we'll let you know who we'll be interviewing at some point during the week. Thanks very much for joining us.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
I
Bye.